Dad laughed and said, "You don't have kids, so you'll pay for ours." That was the moment I realized family doesn't always mean love. It was a quiet Sunday evening when I drove down to my parents' house in Oregon. The air smelled like pine and roast chicken, the same way it always had when Mom cooked. I hadn't been home in months. Between work and trying to keep my peace, I didn't have much reason to visit. But Mom had called earlier that week, saying it would mean a lot if I came by for dinner. When I walked in, everything looked exactly the same. Family pictures on the wall, the old floral couch, the same dusty clock ticking in the corner. My dad sat at the table, beer in hand, while my brother Evan and his wife Tina chased their kids around the living room. Everyone seemed loud, happy, alive. I smiled, even though part of me felt out of place. Dinner started with small talk, work, weather, the usual. Mom kept filling everyone's plates while Dad talked about Evan's new job search. Evan had lost another job, something about management not understanding him. I stayed quiet, cutting my chicken, hoping no one would ask me for anything. Then Dad leaned back, laughing. "You know, Claire, since you don't have kids, you should help out your brother more. He's got mouths to feed." Everyone chuckled, like it was harmless fun. I forced a small smile, trying not to make it awkward. But inside, something stung. I'd worked hard for what I had. Every dollar saved, every late night spent balancing books. I'd helped Evan before, loans that were never paid back, gifts that were never appreciated. "Dad," I said softly, "I already helped plenty." He waved his hand, brushing off my words. "Oh, come on, sweetheart. You make good money. What's a few extra dollars for family?" Evan grinned, shoveling mashed potatoes onto his plate. "She's just stingy, Dad. You know how she is." The laughter that followed filled the room, but it felt heavy. Cold. Mom looked down at her plate, not saying a word. Tina whispered something to Evan, and they both giggled. I felt the heat rise in my chest, but I stayed silent. Fighting never helped in this house. I just kept my fork moving, pretending not to hear them. After a moment, Dad leaned in again, smirking. "You don't have kids, so you'll pay for ours." This time, nobody laughed but him. The sound echoed against the walls, sharp and mean. I stared at my plate, the food blurring in front of me. That one sentence, meant as a joke, hit harder than any insult could. It told me everything I needed to know about how they saw me. Not as a daughter, not as a sister, just as a wallet. And as Dad kept laughing, I decided quietly in my mind, that would be the last time they'd ever laugh at my expense. Driving back home that night, Claire couldn't stop replaying her father's words. Every laugh, every joke, every time he brushed her off, it all came rushing back like a movie she didn't want to watch. It wasn't just one dinner. It had always been like this. Since they were kids, her brother Evan had been the favorite. When he crashed the family car at 17, her dad covered it up, saying, "Boys make mistakes." When Claire asked for help paying for college books, he told her to learn to manage her money. Even when Evan dropped out of community college, Dad called him a dreamer. When Claire graduated with honors, they just said, "That's nice, honey," and went back to watching TV. Her mom, Linda, never stood up for her. She always said, "You know how your father gets," or "Evan just needs a little help." Every time Claire tried to explain how unfair it felt, her mom would sigh and tell her not to start trouble. After college, the same pattern followed her into adulthood. Evan would lose another job, and suddenly there'd be a family emergency. Tina, his wife, would call Claire crying, saying the kids needed clothes, or they couldn't pay rent. Mason and Ellie were sweet, but their parents used them like shields. "Claire, you're doing so well," Tina would say over the phone. "We're just struggling a little this month. Can you help out again?" Claire would always end up sending something. 200 here, 500 there. And every time, she promised herself it would be the last. But somehow it never was. They knew she wouldn't say no. She started to feel like the only reason they ever called was for money. No one asked how she was doing. No one visited her apartment or remembered her birthday. She was the responsible one, the steady one, the one they could use without guilt. One evening, Claire sat down to check her bank account. Something looked wrong. A withdrawal she didn't make, $8,000 gone. Her heart dropped. She checked again, thinking it was a mistake. Then she saw it. Her father's name, Robert Benson, still listed as co-owner on that old savings account she'd opened years ago. She didn't need to ask where the money went. She already knew. Claire drove straight to her parents' house the next morning, gripping the steering wheel so tight her knuckles turned white. She didn't call first. She didn't want to. All night, she'd stared at her computer screen, reading and rereading the transaction record, hoping she was wrong. But she wasn't. $8,000 gone. When she pulled up in front of the house, the porch light was still on. Her father was outside fixing something on the truck. He looked up, surprised. "Claire, you didn't say you were coming." She didn't answer. She walked straight toward him, holding the printed bank statement in her shaking hand. "Dad, did you take money out of my account?" He wiped his hands on a rag, frowning. "What money?" "Don't play dumb," she said. $8,000. It's missing. Your name is still on my savings account from years ago. Did you take it?" He didn't even flinch. He just sighed like she was overreacting. "Claire, you're making a big deal out of nothing. It's family money. You don't need it like Evan does. He's got kids, a mortgage, real responsibilities." Claire's chest tightened. "Family money? That's my savings. I worked for that. You had no right to touch it." He shrugged. "Sweetheart, we're family. You'll get it back someday. Evan just needed a little help." "Help?" she said, her voice cracking. "He's been getting help his whole life. You've bailed him out of every bad choice he's ever made, and now you're stealing from me to do it." Just then, Evan walked out from the garage with a smug look. "What's going on?" he asked, pretending he didn't know. "You know exactly what's going on," Claire said. "You took my money." Evan smirked. "Oh, come on, Claire. Don't be dramatic. It's not like you're broke. You don't have kids, you don't have a family. You'll understand one day when you do." Her stomach turned. "Don't you dare talk down to me like that." He raised an eyebrow. "It's just money. You act like it's life or death." Robert stepped between them. "Enough," he said firmly. "Evan's right. You've always been too sensitive about money. We're family, we share what we have. You should be proud to help." Claire stared at them both, speechless. The people who were supposed to protect her had stolen from her and didn't even feel ashamed. Her mother peeked through the kitchen window but didn't come out. Of course she didn't. She never did. Something inside Claire snapped. "You know what? Keep it," she said coldly. "Every penny. But don't ever ask me for another dime. You won't see me again." She turned, walked to her car, and didn't look back. As she drove away, her hands still shook, but her mind was clear for the first time in years. That night, she opened her laptop again, not to check her account, but to start planning. They thought she'd let it go. They were wrong. Claire packed her apartment slowly, filling boxes with the life she had built and the pain she was leaving behind. The drive from her hometown to Salem felt like crossing a line she would never step back over. A new job was waiting for her, better pay, better position, and most importantly, a fresh start. When she arrived, she rented a small but bright apartment near the park. The air smelled clean, and no one there knew her as Evan's sister. For the first time, she could breathe without guilt. She opened a new bank account, changed her phone number, and even got a post office box so her family couldn't track her so easily. It felt strange at first, like she was hiding from them, but it also felt safe. Months turned into a year. Work was busy, but she liked it. Her co-workers respected her. She went on morning walks, learned to cook new recipes, and sometimes spent her weekends reading by the window while rain tapped the glass. Life felt quiet, almost peaceful. Her family didn't call much anymore. When they did, it was always the same thing. Evan asking if she could help out just this once, or her mom leaving long voicemails about how hard things had been. She ignored most of them. It wasn't easy. The guilt still came, but so did the memory of what they'd done. One afternoon, her phone rang. It was her father. She hesitated before answering. His voice was gruff, like always. "Truck broke down," he said. "I need about $2,000. I'll pay you back when I can." Claire stayed calm. "Dad, I can't help you." There was a long silence. "Can or won't?" he asked. "Won't," she said softly. He let out a sharp laugh. "You've changed. After everything I've done for you." She closed her eyes. "You took from me, Dad. You didn't do anything for me." He grumbled something under his breath, then said, "Ungrateful. You'll regret this when we're gone." The line went dead. Claire stood there for a moment, staring at her phone, then whispered to herself, "No, Dad. You will." Outside, the rain kept falling, steady and calm, just like her heart. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel guilty for saying no. She just felt free. It was a quiet Sunday morning when Claire's phone started buzzing on the table. The number was familiar, her mother's. She hesitated before answering. Every call from home carried a weight, a mix of guilt and dread. "Claire." Her mother's voice cracked as soon as she spoke. Honey, it's your brother. He lost his job again. Things are really bad this time. Claire stayed silent, listening as her mother went on. They're behind on their mortgage. The bank's threatening to take the house. The kids don't understand what's happening. Your father's doing what he can, but we just don't know what to do. There it was, the same old story wrapped in new tears. Claire leaned against the kitchen counter, feeling her stomach twist, but her voice came out steady. Mom, I'm sorry you're going through this, but I can't help. Her mother sniffled. Claire, please. You know Evan's trying. He just had bad luck again. Mason and Ellie don't deserve this. They're your family. I know they are, Claire said quietly. But I'm not their safety net. I can't keep cleaning up his mistakes. Her mother's tone changed, a mix of guilt and accusation. How can you say that? Blood comes first. Family helps family. Claire felt her jaw tighten. The words hit like they were meant to hurt, but instead, they lit something inside her. A hard, cold truth she'd learned the day her father stole from her. You made that rule, remember? My blood didn't matter when you took my money. There was silence on the other end. Just her mother's quiet breathing. Claire, she finally whispered, you're still angry about that? That was a long time ago. Your father only did what he thought was right. Claire let out a bitter laugh. Right for who? For Evan? For you? Because it sure wasn't right for me. Her mother's voice grew sharp. You'll understand one day when you have your own children. I don't need to have kids to understand betrayal, Claire said calmly. You all made your choices. Now I'm making mine. Her mother's sobs grew louder. If your father knew I called, he'd be furious. He said you've turned your back on us. I haven't, Claire said. You all turned your backs on me first. She ended the call before she could lose her composure. For a moment, she just stood there, the sound of her mother's voice echoing in her head. Then she sat down at the kitchen table, staring out the window. For the first time in years, she felt something she didn't expect, a strange mix of guilt and power. The guilt for saying no, and the power that came with finally standing her ground. The phone stayed quiet after that. No more crying calls. No more guilt trips. Just silence. And in that silence, Claire finally found peace. Over the next year, Claire focused on her life and nothing else. Work became her world. She stayed late at the office, volunteered for projects, and earned herself a promotion. With the extra income, she started investing carefully, learning how to make her money work for her instead of letting anyone else touch it. For the first time, her savings grew instead of disappearing. She moved into a new apartment on the top floor of a quiet building. It had wide windows and a little balcony where she could sit with her morning coffee and watch the sun rise over the city. Her days were steady, peaceful, and finally her own. She didn't think much about her family anymore. She had learned to live without their calls, their guilt, or their endless requests. One afternoon, she ran into Margie, an old family friend, at the grocery store. Margie smiled and asked about work, but then she said something that made Claire stop in her tracks. Your dad talks about you all the time, Margie said. He says he doesn't know what he'd do without you, that you always bail him out when he's in trouble. For a moment, Claire didn't even know how to respond. Her father, bragging about help she never gave, pretending she was still the obedient daughter who handed over money whenever he asked. It was like hearing about a version of herself that no longer existed. She smiled politely, pretending it didn't bother her, but inside, anger started to grow. Not the loud, shouting kind. This was quieter, sharper, like a knife waiting for the right moment. Her father had taken from her, humiliated her, and now he was using her name as if she were still his safety net. That night, Claire sat at her kitchen table with a glass of wine, thinking. She could ignore it, like she always had. But something inside her whispered no more. This time, she wouldn't explode in anger. She would walk back into that house calm, clear, and prepared to tell the truth. A week later, she called her mother. I'll come for Thanksgiving, she said simply. Linda sounded relieved, almost cheerful, as if the family would finally be whole again. Claire hung up the phone and stared out her window. The city lights flickered below her. As she packed for the trip, she practiced what she'd say in her head. This time, she whispered to herself while driving toward her hometown, they'll hear me. The Benson house looked the same as it always had. Warm lights glowing through the windows, the smell of turkey drifting into the cold evening air. Claire stood outside for a moment before knocking, her hand clutching the folder she had brought with her. Inside were papers she'd kept for almost 2 years. Bank statements, emails, and proof of every dollar her father had taken. Her mother opened the door, smiling nervously. "Claire, you came." She hugged her tightly, as if afraid she might change her mind and leave. Everyone's in the dining room. When Claire stepped inside, her father was at the head of the table, carving the turkey, a beer beside him. Evan and Tina were there with the kids, talking loudly. The moment Claire walked in, the room went quiet for a second. Then Robert grinned and said, "Well, look who decided to come home." She smiled politely. "Wouldn't miss it," she said, setting her folder quietly on the sideboard. Dinner began as usual. Her mother kept the conversation light, asking about work and complimenting the food. Claire answered calmly, laughing at small jokes, pretending everything was fine. She watched them carefully, their comfort, their old habits, their certainty that she had forgiven and forgotten. Halfway through dinner, after the second round of drinks, her father leaned back in his chair. "You know," he said, his voice loud and teasing, "Claire's doing so well now. Maybe she can help out her brother again. After all, she doesn't have kids to worry about." Evan laughed, and Tina smiled awkwardly. The words hit the table like a cold wind. Claire set down her fork. Her voice was calm. "That's funny, Dad," she said. "Because last time you said that, you took $8,000 out of my account." The laughter stopped. Her father's grin faltered. "What are you talking about?" he asked, though his voice was suddenly tight. Claire stood slowly, walked to the sideboard, and picked up the folder. She laid it open on the table, papers neatly stacked, every page marked. "These are copies of my bank statements," she said evenly. "Proof of the withdrawal you made. Proof of where it went. Proof of everything." No one spoke. The only sound was the quiet hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Her mother's face went pale. "Claire, you didn't have to." "Yes, I did," Claire interrupted softly. "You stole from me. And I'm here to collect, not money, but the truth. I want you all to hear what you did." Evan shifted uncomfortably. "Come on, Claire. You're making a scene in front of the kids." She looked at him, her eyes steady. They should see what honesty looks like. They'll learn something their parents never did. Robert's mouth opened, maybe to laugh again, but no sound came out. His eyes darted between the papers and his daughter's face. For the first time in her life, Claire watched her father fall silent, his laughter dying mid-breath. The room stayed quiet after Claire spoke. No one moved. Her father still stared at the papers spread out on the table, his face red and stiff. Her mother clutched her napkin, her hands trembling. Evan avoided her eyes, and Tina looked ready to cry. Claire took a slow breath. "I didn't come here to argue," she said. "I came to let you know I've already contacted a lawyer." Her mother's head shot up. "A lawyer?" she said, her voice shaking. "Claire, no, you can't mean that. We're family. You don't take your own family to court." "I didn't want to," Claire said softly. "But you left me no choice." She turned to her father. "You took my money without asking. That's theft, Dad. You didn't even apologize. You laughed about it." Evan slammed his hand on the table. "You're overreacting. You can't sue your own father. What will people think?" Claire looked at him calmly. "Maybe they'll think the truth. Maybe they'll finally see who you all really are." Tina's voice broke. "Please, Claire, don't do this. The kids, they don't need to see their family fighting like this." "The kids," Claire said, her voice steady, "need to see what happens when people lie and steal. Maybe then they won't grow up thinking this is normal." Her mother stood, tears running down her face. "Please, honey, drop it. Your father is old, he didn't mean harm. He just wanted to help your brother." Claire shook her head. "I'm not destroying this family, Mom. You did that when you decided Evan's comfort was worth more than my trust." Robert finally spoke, his voice rough and low. "You've turned your back on us, Claire. All because of a few dollars." She looked at him, her voice cold. $8,000 isn't a few. But it's not about the money anymore. It's about respect. And you lost mine a long time ago. She gathered her folder and slid it into her bag. No one tried to stop her. She walked to the door, her mother calling after her, her brother cursing under his breath. The house that had once felt like home now sounded like chaos. Outside, the air was cold and sharp. She got into her car and sat for a moment, letting the silence wash over her. Then her phone buzzed. It was a text from her lawyer. "Case accepted. Will proceed Monday." Claire looked at the message and smiled faintly. For the first time, justice felt real. The lawsuit moved faster than Claire expected. Within weeks, her lawyer had gathered all the proof and sent the papers to her father. Robert tried to ignore it at first, thinking she was bluffing, but the court didn't see it that way. The evidence was clear: his name, his signature, the missing money. When the final judgment came, it wasn't just about the money. The court ordered Robert to repay her in full, which meant selling his old truck and part of the house equity. Claire didn't feel proud or happy when she heard. She didn't smile or celebrate. It didn't feel like victory. It just felt fair. For once, something in her life was balanced. News spread quickly through their small town. People started whispering. The man who used to brag about his hardworking daughter was now known as the father who stole from her. Evan stopped showing his face at the local bar. Tina quit posting cheerful updates about their perfect family. And her mother stopped calling entirely. Claire didn't chase them. She didn't need to. The silence between them said everything. One afternoon, a letter arrived in the mail. The handwriting was familiar, her father's. She thought about throwing it away but finally opened it. The pages were filled with angry words. He blamed her for everything, for embarrassing him, for dividing the family, for turning her back on them. He wrote that money wasn't worth what they had lost. Claire read every line once, slowly, then set the letter on the counter. Her hands didn't shake. There were no tears this time. She could hear his voice in every word, still proud, still unable to see what he had done. She took the letter to her kitchen sink, struck a match, and held it to the corner. The paper caught quickly, curling into black ash as the flames spread. When it was nearly gone, she dropped the ashes into her empty coffee mug and watched them dissolve in the water she poured over them. The smoke rose faintly, leaving behind a faint smell of burnt paper and old memories. Claire stood there for a moment, quiet, her reflection trembling in the dark coffee surface. It wasn't joy she felt, or even sadness, just peace. For the first time, her father's words couldn't touch her. They had turned to ash, just like the power he once had over her. 2 years passed quietly after the lawsuit. Claire had moved to Portland and built a new life far away from the noise of her past. Her days were calm now: work, coffee by the window, evening walks through the city streets. She worked as a financial consultant, helping people protect their money, something she'd learned the hard way. Her apartment was small but full of light. Plants lined the windowsill, and her desk overlooked the busy street below. Sometimes she thought about her family, but the thoughts no longer hurt. They felt distant, like a story she'd already finished reading. One afternoon, while she was reviewing a client's file, her phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something about it made her pause before answering. Claire. The voice was shaky, hesitant. She recognized it immediately. Evan. She took a breath. Yes. It's me, he said quietly. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For what Dad did. For not standing up for you. I know it's too late, but I needed to say it. His voice cracked a little, and for a moment, Claire didn't know what to feel. There was no anger left, no satisfaction, just a heavy sadness. The kind that came from realizing too much time had passed to fix anything. She didn't rush to answer. She let the silence hang for a moment, then said softly, Evan, I appreciate the call. Really. But some things can't be undone. I know, he said. Dad's gone now. Mom's not doing great. I just thought you should know. Claire closed her eyes, keeping her tone steady. I hope you're taking care of your family. I'm trying, he said. It's been hard. She nodded to herself. Take care of your kids, Evan. I already took care of mine. There was nothing else to say. She heard him sniffle on the other end before the call ended. Claire sat there for a moment, looking out at the city lights coming on one by one. She felt something loosen inside her, a quiet acceptance. She didn't forgive them completely, but she no longer carried their weight. As she sipped her coffee, a small smile touched her lips. She whispered to herself, Dad once said I'd pay for their kids. Turns out, I paid for my freedom instead. The city outside kept moving, alive and bright, and for the first time in years, so did she.